The funny thing about networking is that you really don't need to be connected to everybody in the world. You just need to be connected to Frank Agin. This is my conversation with Frank Agin. What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh Rephun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. I'm here with Frank Agin, president of AmSpirit Business Connections. He's also the host of Networking RX, the podcast, and he believes in love over hate, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to get into all of it today. Frank, thanks so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to this.
So tell me about AmSpirit Business Connections and why business connections are so important.
Yeah, I guess I'll give you the nickel tour of me. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and that's neither here nor there, but I came here to go to law school. Never intended on staying. This was back in 1984. I got a law degree, got an MBA, went off to, involves a woman, stayed in town, got a job in public accounting as a tax consultant. And it was a good job. It was great pay. It was great everything. Beautiful glass building, everything you would aspire to. I just didn't want to do taxes for the rest of my life. And most people can
relate to that. Yeah.
And so I left to go into private practice. And a funny thing happened when I went into private practice. And I tell people the funny thing was that nothing happened. I had no idea how to get clients because when you're in higher education, they talk about networking. They kind of give lip service to it, but they really don't understand it. And when you work in a big firm, they don't really teach you that. They just come on in to do the work. Don't worry about getting clients. Save that for another day. So I struggled. Well, business is a struggle in and of itself, but I was deathly afraid for several weeks. And I had lunch one day with a friend of mine who was an attorney, and she took a different path out of law school. She started her own firm. And I just asked her, I said, what do I need to do to be successful? I don't want to go begging for my job back. The thoughts of being, 20 something years old or 30 something, early 30s and being stuck in a soulless career in my mind. And she said, you need to get into a tips club or a leads group. And many people out there are familiar with like BNI. And so at any rate,
I've been in tipsy clubs.
Okay.
I've been in tipsy clubs before. And
Okay.
the networking is good, but the next day it hurts.
Oh, there you go. At any rate, I got invited to a group that was based out of Pittsburgh, and they were starting groups here in Columbus. And as it was explained to me, it made total sense. You could lift up your whole world by helping other people be successful and just trusting that it'll come back to you. And I really doubled down on that because Hersh, that makes sense. It's who we are as humans. I can talk about you all day long and how great you are in your podcasts and everything, so professional, and feel good about myself. But if I self-promote for 5 minutes, I need a nap, right? I mean, it takes so much energy. So I really doubled down on that experience and became that chapter's first president, got on a national advisory board with the organization, became its first franchisee, and then bought it out in the early 2000s and stopped the practice of law. And that really switched my trajectory from being this attorney to being this person who was very right-brained, very focused on, I say professional relationships, but relationships are relationships. I mean, God gave us one brain, and there's not a special compartment for business relationships. It's all relationships. And really I've become a student of relationships and why things work and why they don't, what makes us tick and what, makes us not. And, that's where, meeting hate or fear with love really kind of comes from. And so we need to have these connections. We're doing nothing alone. Anybody out there says hey, I did it all on my own, you're lying. You're standing on somebody's shoulders, somebody's lifting you up. And, so to your question, why are these things important? Because it's everything. It really is.
Well, I can totally relate to the idea of self-promotion being agonizing. My whole career my career's involved PR, it's involved brand storytelling. It's always about making somebody look good. And usually, to your other point about there's no difference between friendships, business relationships, there really isn't. You would not want to be promoting people you don't like or respect or love.
Right.
So my goal has always been to seek out people that I really admire and make them look better and make them look great. But then when it comes to, the first thing I always say to them is third party validation is so important. It's so important to have third party validation. Well, what about me? And that we get testimonials, which feel great and are helpful, but just lead generation, going the hard sell, going in to sell something to somebody, and there are people who get that selling is good and important, and there are
Yeah.
people like me who feel like selling is a bad thing. I don't really, but I mean that's some kind of default. I remember being a kid and an insurance salesman, I think it was. Yeah, an insurance salesman came over, and back in the day they would do home
Yeah.
meetings, and they would talk to your parents, and they'd sit down and have coffee, and I remember my parents having this really polite conversation, and after he left, I said something that was very uncharacteristic of me, even being a smartass, and I said, "What did that idiot want?" And and my parents were like, "That's Heshy, that's a terrible thing to say," and I was like, I just had in my mind that the idea of this guy in a suit coming and wanting money ultimately was a bad thing.
Yeah.
And it was wrong of me. I don't lose sleep over it, but it was, you know, what is it? You don't want to be that idiot, right? You don't want to be
No.
that idiot selling something. So continue your story. So what happened next?
Well, I took over this business and I have really st- been focused on growing it and trying to help business people out there. The whole, the sales thing, I get it. The problem with sales is that there are people out there who are trying to convince others that they need things that they might not need. That's kind of the
Right.
messy, the dirty part of
Yes.
selling, right?
Yeah.
But the way I look at networking is that you do a good enough job. You build relationships with people around you who really understand what you're about. So let's say you're the insurance salesperson and you really do a good job getting others to understand these are the situations where I could really swing into action and help somebody. If you know of a young family out there, have got kids, I can really help them protect the family unit with life insurance in case something happens. And that, you know,
Right.
it- nobody wants to sell life. Well, I shouldn't say nobody wants to sell life insurance, but that's a hard sell. But if somebody like your father says to the person who knows the life insurance person, yeah, you know what? I got this great family and I don't plan on going anywhere, but boy, I want to make sure they're okay. And I just really need to find somebody who could help me with this life insurance thing. And they will say, oh, you know what? I've got this perfect person I'd like to introduce you to. And then that person's coming over to your house and your family's like, welcome, come on in. We want to talk to you. Now, that's not a guarantee that they're going to do business with them. Maybe the price isn't right or whatever it might be, but at least that insurance agent is stepping into something where he or she is not having to climb this uphill battle of trying to convince you on life insurance.
Yeah, the introduction, the
Yeah.
the icebreaker, like that's really a major thing. It's one thing if there's a need, if you know there's a need.
Yeah.
Having to ask if there is a need is the scariest and also the most awkward part.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that you're able to do is to have people maybe overcome the fear of the network of the connections because it can be so helpful. Because
Yeah.
it's an icebreaker to say, "Oh, so and so told me that you might be in the market for something like this." I have people reach out to me on LinkedIn with things that are totally not totally I wouldn't say inappropriate because that suggests like they're
Right.
making it, something that's untoward,
Yeah.
but but not relevant to me at all.
Yeah.
And it's awkward even backing out of that thing,
Yes. Yes.
and you don't ever want to, at that point, you don't ever want to really connect with that person again because you're like, oh God, that was just weird.
Well,
You
most of
know,
those people are using bots anyway, so they're not they're,
there, I
you
mean,
know,
there's no real actual feelings to be hurt.
right. Yeah. And yeah, you're almost better just to ignore it. If you
Yeah.
ignore it, then they don't really know. As soon as then you reject it, then they're like, oh, what's wrong with him?
Yeah. It's like kicking C3PO in the balls. Who gets hurt?
Yeah,
Really?
right. Yeah, right.
It's you.
Exactly.
It's your
Yeah.
foot. He
Yeah,
doesn't feel a
exactly.
thing.
Yeah. But with the whole networking thing, and someone hit me with this the other day, there's 7 billion people on the planet. That's a big number, and there's enough people out there willing to who have a need for what you have.
Mhm.
It's just connecting through the people to find your share of those people. And that's the problem with the people out there kind of doing that hardcore sale, making people uncomfortable is they're trying to force that. They're trying to and and that's where it gets really odd.
Well, desperation never works.
No.
It never works to say, "Hey, I really need this sale."
Right.
We don't even really say that to our friends. We might say it to our closest friends and say, "Look, man, you gotta do me a solid," or something like that. But even there, I think we're protective of that idea that we need something, and
Yes.
we prefer that the customer be the one who needs something, which makes sense. If the
Yes.
customer does need it, then it doesn't matter how bad we need it because that's
Yeah.
not relevant. And that's the ideal situation.
Well, I think what happens is a lot of salespeople do one of two things, maybe both. One, they put themselves in a financial predicament that they just need to get on that treadmill and run every day, right? I got to sell, I got to sell, I got to sell. And, when I'm talking to young entrepreneurs, I'm like, you got to be careful with your money because know, nobody's going to do business with you because you got a car payment to make, right? Nobody cares.
Right.
Maybe grandma does, but beyond that, you only have two grandmas. So, nobody really cares. But the other thing is that they head into it and they really haven't done a good job of kind of building a network before they head into it. They're starting totally cold. Financial advisors, for example, they start totally cold. Hey, just go through your warm market and call friends and family. Well, that's the worst place to start if I'm doing that. I don't wanna be
Yeah.
bothering them. It's okay that I'm walking down the street and you decide you wanna go on the other side of the street to not make eye contact with me. But when it's Uncle Bob and Aunt Sally that avoid you at church because,
Yeah.
then it's not good. But that's where networking comes in and building relationships and the relationships that you're trying to build they're genuine, right? I mean, you're trying to help people. And I tell people that you need to build you need to help people beyond what you sell. So you're out there in the
Mhm.
community, out there in this, amongst even your target market, trying to figure out, okay, what are things that you need beyond what I sell? What other
Right.
things can help you? And let me try and help you with those things. And that's how you you put yourself on people's radars. They're gonna, oh, that guy really helped me.
Yeah. And sometimes it's about telling somebody about, just helping them. There are a couple of things that I learned early in my career in advertising. One is that if you don't have the product that the client needs, be a resource and
Right.
direct them to the right place, even if it's a
Yeah.
competitor. Because if you don't have it, the fact that their competitor doesn't matter.
Right.
But the client will remember you for helping them, especially when you got nothing out of it
Yep.
and the other guy got the job. And the other guy will remember it because he'll think of you as you are gracious and not selfish and not petty. So, that's a win-win. The other thing I learned was I worked for a client that had two of the biggest advertisers in the United States as core clients and was very anxious about getting new clients and would like put pressure on me. I handled sales and PR for the West Coast for this company and was like, get new clients. I go, yeah, but we have A and B. I mean, we're doing like, Super Bowl commercials and we're doing all that. He goes, you think that's gonna last forever?
Yeah.
and 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 I got it. I was like, oh yeah, as perfect as everything is and as much energy it goes into retaining those clients, if you're lucky, your business life is long and it's
Yeah.
going to involve change. And you can't think of change as an enemy. You have to think of it as an inevitability and just prepare for it and
Yeah.
hustle. Go out and hustle.
Well, in my mind, that would be scary. For
Yeah.
me, working as a young attorney, the scariest moments for me were when I would close on a project, right? I'd have a project to do for a
Yeah.
client because then it's like, oh God, now what? Because this is going to end and I'm going to be busy with this and I don't have time to market now because I'm busy with
Right.
this. But I know this is going to end and I'm going to send them a bill and they're going to pay me and I'm going to be starting all over again. And so I always liked having a pipeline of just little things that not little things, but just you know, kind of kept you busy.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
diverse.
yes, I like that too. I get excited when th- yeah, I think this may be what you're saying as well. I get very excited by small projects
Right.
because it's
Yeah.
comfortable to take on something finite, let's call it. And yet the pleasure and the satisfaction and the confidence it instills is immense. You're like, "Oh, this is great. I have, for the next 3 hours, I have my marching orders. That's
Right.
great." And then when the big thing closes, you're like, "Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Now I gotta do it." And hopefully I feel good about it. I did learn long ago not to take on those ones that the money's attractive, but you have a bad feeling about.
Yeah.
Have you had those experiences where things look like they could be tremendously lucrative, but just weren't right?
In private practice, I never did. I had a great mix of clients that were, decent sized projects, but nothing immense. But I remember in my tax consulting days, the firm taking on super large projects, clients like this is going to be a game changer for the firm. And then realizing, and it didn't impact me directly because I wasn't assigned to it, but I could see other people. It's like, be careful what you wish for kind of a thing.
Yes.
Okay, now you've got it. Now they're going to beat you up at every turn on the bill. Whereas the small people struggle to pay. The big people, they want the best possible price because, well, we're
Oh,
big,
yes.
right? And it was the middle ones that were the best because you weren't necessarily always getting the great rates, but they appreciated it and they never balked at paying the bill. And as long as it was reasonable, you know,
Right.
I'm saying it's going to be this. Look, it's this. Okay, let me go in the next room and bring you a check. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm not chasing things. Some of those the bigger clients, it's like, well, we have 90-day terms. It's like, well, geez, our line of credit's 30 days. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the numbers didn't add up. Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. And then there are those who will keep trying to get the cost down to the point where if they're that worried about that little amount of money,
Mhm.
their expectations are probably exponentially higher
Yes.
because they're so worried about a certain amount of money that they're like, well, I better get A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. If I'm spending $100, I better get all the bells and whistles. And it doesn't work out. It's not the real world
Yeah, it's
that a
it's
lot
a
of
power
people,
dynamic. It's a power dynamic is really what it boils down to, and I don't know.
yeah. Who has time? Who has time to feel bad about themselves? Uh, eh, you know, the 80s were a long time ago.
Yeah,
The cutthroat kind of me thing, this I'm better than you, and all this other all the bullshit and the blowhards and all that stuff.
yep,
I am finding that coming out of the pandemic, 2 things. A lot of trauma and a lot of PTSD and a lot of fear and uncertainty, but on the other side, a lot of willingness to connect, a lot of warmth that maybe people kept a little bit in reserve before. Maybe they were a little more protective of themselves, of their heart, of what they have to give before. and it was enough to just be a business person, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the one thing I noticed during the pandemic, well, it's kind of like, when years ago or 3 years ago when you went to networking events, the question was the go-to question was, "How's the weather?" Right? Because 'Cause you're in the
Yeah.
same locale, everybody's experiencing the same weather. During the pandemic, I'd have conversations with people over in India. "How's it going? How's the pandemic?"
Mhm.
It was this worldwide moment where we all shared the same thing.
Yeah.
Even World War II, there were parts of the world that, yeah, it doesn't not really affecting us,
Yeah.
su sucks to be you. But the pandemic was that first time where it was like, yeah, this is really hitting everybody. And so I think we've really realized this common bond, this humanity that we all have, and realizing that, geez, we all have families, or some of us have kids, we all have loved ones in our lives, and we're concerned about these things, and we're concerned about the next day. Maybe not so much the next meal. It would never really got
Yeah.
that bad, but what's happening, what's going to happen, and nobody knew. And so there was a degree of empathy, which, interestingly enough, the maybe not obviously, but the media didn't really, they let's pour gasoline on this thing. It's just right. It was just every turn.
Yeah. Players in the media feel that it's their job to create fires and pour gasoline on fires and reap the benefit of everybody coming to see it
Yeah.
and reap the benefit of polarization and it's between people, then that's how they're going to proceed. It is harder and harder to determine what's real and what's truthful.
Yes.
You know, truth has become a variable, which upsets the balance of the universe, really.
Yeah.
That there isn't such a thing as a universal truth, even though there is. We don't control fact. We don't control the difference between fact and fiction, but we can fail to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And that happens quite a bit. And I think maybe people are warmer and more open for that reason because it's like, you know what? I really can't control whether masks work or not. I really can't control whether a vaccine is good or not. I can't control whether or not they're needed or this is needed or not. But I can control whether I open my heart a little bit or not.
Yeah.
I can control whether I'm nice to this person or whether I'm willing to have a conversation with people who have views that differ from mine. I
Yeah.
can control that. It may not be a happy conversation. I may be sitting there listening to someone rant and rave, but I can control whether I rant and rave. I
Well, I think we need each other more. I mean, it's,
oh, for
and
sure.
I'm not bashing on the media. I mean, I think part of the
Yeah.
problem is the media has some of the media, mainstream media they're in the eyeball business, right? They're not in the information business. They're not
Mhm.
in, hey, listen, these are the facts. Walter Contrite, that's the way it was, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. And so we kind of need one another. I really think, I mean, this is self-serving because we're both podcasters. I think podcasting is going to be our salvation because it allows us to gather information to really understand what's going on. The 2-minute
Yeah.
or 30-second soundbite of, hey, this is what's happening. You can't really, the world's too complicated.
Yeah.
But in a podcast, and there are people out there who've left media because for the very reasons we're talking about, and have shows where they're, 30 minutes, 60-minute, 90-minute shows where they're really going to unpack things. It's like, oh my God, I never realized that. I, I went to law school. I had a whole class on constitutional law. We talked about Roe v. Wade, right?
Right.
And I'm not trying to make a political commentary, but I listened to a podcast where the commentator was pro-choice. He's totally in favor of pro-choice, but he was very anti Roe v. Wade because, and he was a law professor. He said the Supreme Court overstepped its bounds. The Supreme Court doesn't make law. It just judges the law that's already there. And with Roe v. Wade, it made the law. There were 49 states that had anti-abortion laws on the books, and it basically said to all those states, without looking at the laws, they're all unconstitutional. This is what it should be. And I'd never heard that argument before, even in law school. And it was just, to me, it was fascinating. And again, you know, the issue aside, we don't need to get into that, but
Right.
that's where a podcast can really unpack that for you. Whereas in the news, it's not, you're just going to see people on the left and right, throwing things at one another.
Well, because simply it's not discussion. A discussion isn't a debate is this is my opinion, that's your opinion.
Right.
That's a debate. A discussion is, hey, I saw this thing where the idea that possibly the Supreme Court overstepped its bounds by deciding Roe v. Wade. What do you think of that? And then another constitutional lawyer or scholar could have their opinion. And then
Right.
say, "Ooh, I never heard that before." Okay, well, what about that? And it isn't a vested interest in a certain opinion. It's a discussion about what the opinion might be. If the idea is just to get on the air because you have an ego for hearing your own voice and you just want to put your opinion out there as then that's what I would call a podcasturing.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You're really just posturing, you're really just podcasturing. You want people to hear your outrageous thing or your extreme thing or your polar thing,
Yeah.
and you don't really care about hearing anybody else say any why is the other opinion offensive to us? Why how I wonder how that's I know that to some degree it's been fomented, like, to
Yeah.
get angry about other opinions, but, and I remember in 2016 being very fired up and being angry and kind of getting ranting. Go through this period where I would post stuff on Facebook and I couldn't help it. I knew it wasn't gonna do anything. I knew that I wasn't
Right.
saying anything new, but I was podcastering, not in a podcast, but I was like putting a thing out as though I had some knowledge or authority, and I didn't. But I also didn't learn anything, right? Because
Well, we don't. Well, yeah,
nobody wanted to fight.
we don't solve anything, right? We don't. I think Barack Obama said at one point that much of the disagreement in the House and the Senate, well, between the left and the right, is really a battle between the 40s, to use a football metaphor, right? I mean, these parties aren't so far apart. I'll throw another one out there: gun control, right? I tell people everybody is for gun control. Like, oh, no, no, no. Yes, they are. You know, who's in favor here of kindergartners bringing Uzis to school? Well, that's silly. Well, that's gun control, right? It's just a question of where
Right.
the line is. That's what we're arguing about, where the line is.
Well, there may
And
be some who would seriously consider arming kindergarten children, but
sure,
they would be in the minority. Like,
right,
they would be in the minority. Now, it's all that grade up from arming school children to arming teachers to arming to militarizing the entire society,
right.
you know? The extremes are where we have
That's
the
the
biggest
problem.
problem.
Right. And those are the ones who get airtime on the news. But the rest of us are, the 95% of us are probably right in that middle, maybe not 95, but 90% in the middle of, you know what? I think we can solve this. And
Right.
we're not trying to solve it today, but I think if you get educated minds sitting down and saying, if we did this and did this and did this, that would help solve this. And we would still have a Second Amendment, right? The
Right.
spirit of the Second Amendment would still be there, you know? And
Well,
we
if the and again, this show isn't I don't think we get, like, political yet on this show, but we certainly don't bar opinions. So anybody's opinion is welcome because the only way to get to the truth or to live with it is to open
right,
your mind to it. But I was gonna say that if the powers that be focused as much on educating the public as arming them, people would be able to have that discourse more
Yeah.
readily. But there are parties that have a vested interest in the undereducation of the public, and that's what helps keep them in power. And so it's not in their interest for people to be able to have intelligent conversations.
Yeah. No,
And,
I agree. I
you
agree.
know, but I don't want to podcast your. I don't want to be podcast your. I only thought of that as we were talking. I don't know that phrase is going to catch on, but of course,
If it does, it was here. You heard it here.
if it does, it was here. It was definitely
Right.
here.
Yep.
But so take me through a typical day. I haven't done this with a guest yet, but in this case, I think it's interesting because we're talking a lot about trying to get business, trying to connect people, trying to do. What is a typical day like for you these days?
Yeah. Most mornings I'm off at one of our chapter meetings. There's a number of chapters I'm responsible for or helping franchisees. There's a lot of nuts and bolts to any business. Every business has the necessary evil of sending out invoices and, paying the bills and, getting those things done. Just making sure those things are in motion. Somebody's doing them. The people are handling the money or the administrative people. And there's always questions. I spend a lot of time talking on the phone to people, getting acquainted with people. And 90% of that is not about um, not about selling anybody, but really kind of learning what people are about, wanting to know what
Mhm.
people are about. And I'm open to hearing what people have to say and what they have to sell, not subjecting myself to their pitch, but just let me know what you're about so I can understand it because it might not be for me, but it might be for the next person I talk to. And that happens, maybe not the next person, but that happens often. I'll talk to somebody and say, you know what? I talked to somebody yesterday. I don't even think they know you exist. And I think you would be a perfect person for them. And, again, it gets back to what I said before is if you help enough people and just trust in karma, it'll come back to you.
Yeah,
And whenever you're connecting two people, you know, hey, you've got a roller skate, they've got a key kind of a thing. They're both happy with you and both are thinking, okay, how can I
right.
return the favor?
How can now to interrupt you for a second? That's great advice for connectors, for the people who are trying to connect with other people. What is a tip that you can give people who are trying to expand their networks? What's like the first piece of advice you could give?
Well, I often get the question, what's the one thing I can do to really jumpstart my network? And my consistent answer is,
That was my question, but that was more eloquently
okay,
stated. That's
okay,
what I meant to say.
okay. Well, my answer to your question then is I tell people, figure out what you're passionate about and go find somewhere to volunteer.
Uh-huh.
Um, it might be pet charities, it might be homelessness, it might be youth sports. It might, the world is full of need. There are people out there that need help. There's organizations, there's schools, there's civic initiatives, it runs the gamut. Your community association or your homeowners association, go and volunteer, go put time into that. And what happens is you never do those things alone. You're always with other people. You're rubbing elbows with people who care about the same things you care about.
Right.
And you don't really ever have to talk about what you're about or what you're doing. They'll figure that out. With LinkedIn, they can go in and, I'll go volunteer
Yeah, they
somewhere.
can
And
see for themselves.
yeah, they'll know. They know. And so that's a great way to create a network. But the other thing that happens when you do those things, so let's say you're involved in the pet charity and, you know, you might not care about that, but you see that they care about it and you see how they're invested and they're making the world a better place. And you just think that they're a better person for that. And you can't help but know them, like them, and trust them as a result of that. So that's always the kind of the first step with respect to trying to get out there and get networked. But people who get on LinkedIn and want to connect with people, my advice to those people is just ask to get acquainted. I'll have people reach out to me. You get the same thing probably. Hey, would love to get to know you. Oh, by the way, here's 3 or 4 paragraphs on what I do and how I might be able to help you. And it's like, okay, I'm getting set up for a sales pitch here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? I'm getting set up for, and I'm just leery of that. But the person said, I would just genuinely like to get to know you, and maybe there's a way we can support one another. Let's just see. Okay, great.
As far as what you do with the accounting background and the law background, those are not the things that they're not the reason why you're a good communicator and a good networker and a good connector. Why do you think it is?
I really enjoy helping people. And I know that sounds cliche, but I take great satisfaction out of, you know, putting people together where it makes sense. I had 2 calls in the last 2 days, 2 IT people, both with apps they've developed, not competing, but kind of on parallel tracks. And it's like, yeah, you 2 should talk. You're probably running in the same circles, trying to connect with the same people. It's that peanut butter and chocolate moment. There's something
Mhm.
here, and I can't tell you what it is. I can't tell you need to combine forces, but if you don't know of each other, now you do. And if nothing comes from this, and I'm totally wrong, it was a complete waste of time. This is what I told him. I'm sorry, but if there's something here, then this, isn't it worth a 30-minute phone
Yeah,
call to explore
you
this?
owe it to yourself to
Right.
explore it. Right. What you did point out was that you reminded me how desperately really love chocolate and peanut butter because that's my daughter's new like camp lunch that she likes is a bagel with one side that has chocolate spread and one side that has peanut butter on it.
Oh,
And I'm of an age now where I can't just go indulge in that and make myself a peanut butter and chocolate spread sandwich. But that's what's going on that other level in the back of my head now.
yeah. Well,
It's like a
that's where if you go see the doctor and he says you have 6 months to live, you just live on that for 6 months, right?
that's
What
right.
do I care,
Peanut butter and chocolate. That's all it
Yeah,
is from
yeah,
that point on. But
yeah,
then, and being human beings, what's interesting about us is that about 3 months in, we'd be like 3 months of chocolate and peanut butter, we'd be like, "Oh my god, I got another 3 months of this shit?
yeah,
I
right.
can't believe I
Yeah,
can't
right.
believe it.
I'm
I
sick of
can't believe
this.
it." There's a great joke. You probably know who Henny Youngman was, but
I
a lot of other people, like kids wouldn't know who Henny Youngman was, but he was a famous comedian, and one of his jokes was, although they use this joke in Goodfellas. He is in Goodfellas. There's a thing in Goodfellas where he's telling the joke, but he says, a doctor gave a guy 6 months to live, couldn't pay his bill. Doctor gave him another 6 months, and it's yeah, we would indulge all we can in peanut butter and chocolate
Yeah.
in terms of in terms of having 6 months to live. I don't know if you well, okay, I can't even go there. I was gonna talk about a show that I love, but of course that would be a spoiler. So I can't even go there now. I have to be very careful on this show. I have so many people that are listening in, the hundreds of millions of people that are listening in that I have to be very careful. And I don't allow my bots to give away spoilers to television
Okay.
shows either. So we're gonna have to I'll either cut out this whole section or we'll leave all these things in because they're so relatable. I think I think what that leads me to is fallibility and the value in not being perfect. We're so careful about what we say. Where do you shake out on that because you're an expert in connecting people and saying the right thing and
Yeah. That is so timely because I had this conversation last Friday. A friend connected me to somebody and wanted me to talk to this he's a young man, new into business. Um, and he let it slip in the conversation. What were his words? "I'm still working to get my first client," is what he said. And I let him finish what he was talking about, and I came back to him. "So what you're telling me is you don't have any clients?" And he said, "No, I don't." And I think he felt bad that he had said that. And I told him, I said, "I'm not trying to make you feel bad. but I don't want you to feel like you ever have to say that again, because nobody wants to be your first client. Nobody's,
Mhm.
you know,
Right.
it's back to nobody's going to buy because you have a car payment, right? Nobody wants to be that first person. But what I found was I was empathetic towards him,
Mhm.
way more empathy. And some people, I was telling my wife this, I said, some people would probably listen to that and say, well, why are you wasting my time? You have no clients, get out, you're wasting my time. Get off
Yeah.
the phone.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just the opposite. It was a coachable moment where I could tell this young guy, listen, don't be so brutally honest,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you have experience. You may not have any clients, but it's akin to the guy who worked for the plumbing company for years, been saving money. Now has his own truck and equipment. He's out on his own. He might not have any clients, but boy, he knows how to unclog a toilet.
My advice to him or to someone who did that I had that experience with would be, tell what I call, having been in PR, an exponential an exponential truth or an aspirational truth. It's not that what you're saying isn't true. It's that what you're saying sounds more impressive than the truth the way you told it. So where
Yeah.
he said, I'm just trying to get my first client, you could say, I'm just trying to get my first 10 clients. Now,
Right.
that's true. He's
Yes.
trying to get 10 clients as much as he's trying to get one, but it doesn't sound quite so sad,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
But there's always but you admired his humility and genuineness, but you're helping him get past that is so valuable. And I expect he'll remember that kindness as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, not necessarily me, but because
I mean, who gives a shit? He doesn't have any clients.
yeah, right, exactly. No, but you want him to pay it forward, right? I mean,
Yeah,
because
no, of course.
that's what you want. We need to be genuine. And I think back to the story my dad told years ago. He was a young teacher. Excuse me. He was a young teacher and ordered carpet. And the carpet that he and my mom ordered wasn't the carpet that showed up.
Oh.
Right? Bait and switch or whatever. It's like,
Uh-huh.
wait a minute, we ordered this and we got this and it's not the same carpet. And well, we're sorry, this is what you got. And damn it, you're just a teacher and we're going to stick it to you.
Right.
And somehow the president of the school board caught wind of this. And the president of the school board was an attorney. And the president of the school board wrote a letter. My dad never hired him. He just did this. I got a young teacher, right? Coach in our school system. I'm going to take this thing on. And lo and behold, the company came and brought the right carpet, right? And
Right.
my dad's like, we never got a bill, never had a conversation about it. And that has always stuck with me as, you know what? Wow. I would love for somebody to be telling a story about me like that someday. Not my name necessarily attached to it, but that, hey, I've done something that was memorable. And I think, you know, you talk about aspirational. I think that's something we all ought to aspire to, is just doing a good turn and just letting it ripple through time.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.